An unexpected brief trip to cosmic hell. Ayahuasca combo trip report of Syrian Rue, Datura and M. tenuiflora by Quan, Aluminium. Posted to earwood.org July 15th, 2025. Introduction. I'd read about DMT for a while. I felt the trip sounded very appealing. Prior to my experience, I had already done high doses of LSD multiple times, so I felt very comfortable with serotonin system-based psychedelic hallucinations. However, I was not prepared at all for the intensity of oral DMT. I sourced an ounce of Syrian Rue and 50 grams of Mimosa hostilis root bark very easily online, and had a natural source of Datura seeds. After a bit of research on the preparation of the potion, I began to work. Preparation. I added 500 milliliters of water to 32 Datura seeds and the 32 grams of Syrian Rue, and began boiling until the water became a deep yellow and the room smelled of coffee and soil. I strained the mixture in a fine metal strainer and repeated the process 4 times, each trial adding less water for a shorter final boil. By the 4th extraction, the water was only a faint yellow, and I knew that all the harmful alkaloids had been dissolved into the golden hot water. The room around me smelled rather foul at this point, and had to open a window and place a fan to reduce the humidity. I boiled the liquid to remove excess water until I was left with 500 milliliters. I determined a dose large enough to get all the MAOI effects should be slightly less than 1/7 of the total, so I settled on 70 milliliters per dose. The Mimosa hostilis extraction was certainly less smelly but far more disgusting. The dirt and plant fibre caked onto the sides of the pot multiple times throughout the experience and had to be washed off into the brew. I did the extraction probably 7 or 8 times until the water was only slightly coloured. I can see why Mimosa hostilis root bark is falsely sold as dye. It produces a deep magenta tone that would certainly stain any clothes it comes into contact with. I added lemon juice to help with the extraction, but I'm not sure how much. After the extraction, I was left with 2.5 litres of the magical drink. I concentrated it down into 1,200 milliliters to make the horrible drinking process more bearable. I added a shot of alcohol to each to ensure that it wouldn't develop any funny bacteria cultures that would give me food poisoning. The process was now complete, and I set off for bed. The experience. My friend, Justin, was absolutely enthralled to try the magic first. So, after fasting for the entire day, he drank 70 milliliters of the Rue followed by 1 cup, 240 milliliters, of the hostilis ayahuasca 15 minutes later. He got basically nothing. Said he had a mild acid body high along with some minor facial distortions, but mainly just unbearable nausea. After 40 minutes, he purged. I thought I had gotten dud root bark. Jesus Christ, how wrong I was. The following day, I fasted. I went to the gym and had very low sugar. I had juice and water before to hopefully avoid passing out. At 9:30, I measured out my dose. I stuck to the 70 milliliter Rue dose but doubled the Mimosa hostilis. I had 2 cups. That's a lot for someone as young and inexperienced as me. I assumed if the grounded root bark I had gotten was super weak, that doubling the dose was reasonable, but it wasn't. Unlike last time, I mixed the brew up very thoroughly before measuring my 2 cups. I drank the stale coffee-tasting Syrian rue, and 15 minutes later drank the Hostilis. I set a stopwatch when I began drinking the ayahuasca. I put a straw in the substance and placed the straw at the back of my mouth to hopefully help with the awful taste, and while it did help, it didn't really do much. The ayahuasca tasted like concentrated citric acid and hydrogen peroxide. The hydrogen peroxide taste made me extremely nauseous. I told myself going in that I wouldn't purge. I did. I got 5/6 through the drink when my body started forcefully gagging. I held it back once, and then again I gagged. The ayahuasca came back into my mouth. I tried to stop it, but the third time I heaved. I vomited all over my desk and floor. I desperately tried to stop myself, but the pain was so unbearable and my gagging wouldn't stop. After vomiting once more on the floor on my way, I made it to the sink and released the brew down the drain. I felt crushed. I had wasted so much ayahuasca. I vomited in the first 3 minutes. Absolutely pathetic. I got a towel and cleaned everything up. Out of anger, I dumped the last fifth down the drain. While I washed out the cup and straw, I felt a placebo. I told myself to ignore it because I figured I may get minor effects, but I really should just go to bed. Then, when my hand moved in front of the tiled bathroom floor, the tiles gravitated towards the movement of my hand, warping the floor entirely. I didn't know what I felt. I felt shock. I wasn't really expecting anything. Only 5 minutes had passed since vomiting. How could I get any effects, let alone what I started seeing? I looked in my mirror. I looked symmetrical in every way, but still recognizable. My skin was smooth and glowing, and my features morphed together. The skin all over my body softly flowed. I stared in shock. The panic became worse and worse. I started walking back to my bed from my bathroom, and every time I blinked I saw rainbows, coloured lines, and these forming menacing geometric patterns. I felt dizzy. I felt drunk. I felt terrified. I laid in bed and shut all of my lights off, telling myself to just sleep. And I tried to, but I felt their presence. When I had my eyes open, I saw these gods watching me, observing me, judging me. They were only outlined and had no facial features. Their outlines were made of geometric zigzagging lines, and I felt terror. I rolled around in bed for minutes until I knew I needed saving. I called my friend, Joe. He was eating dinner with his family and was unable to do much for me or understand what was happening to me at all. I tried to tell him what was happening, but I didn't feel any better. I didn't feel any less alone and powerless. I became so confused and upset that I hung up on him after abruptly saying goodbye and not to call me. I laid back. The trip began. I closed my eyes and saw the tunnel that everyone talks about. And my room no longer existed. I wasn't in my room. My consciousness, my essence, was riding a fractal. I rode up and down waves. Every time I reached a crest, I forgot what I was thinking about. I lost my train of thought each time. The waves became smaller and smaller to my down and right. They culminated at an asymptote where the gods judged me. They terrified me. Whether I had my eyes open or closed, they were there. While I rode this wave and felt their presence, my visual field was filled with zigzagging, bright lines on a dark, glowing background, and I heard a loud, buzzing sound. My thoughts were incoherent. I begged to be sober, for it to end. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel better. I contemplated going to the shower or drawing, but both seemed impossible. And I cried as the gods watched me. I begged for a saviour, but no one came. My girlfriend couldn't help me, and she was so far away and didn't approve of my psychedelic use. neither did my mom, and no one was there to save me. I rode up and down for an eternity. I tossed and turned in my bed. The gods stood still, watching me. I eventually got up when I realised I could. I went to my bathroom and turned on the lights and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was unrecognisable, just glowing noise. When I made different expressions, different parts became discernible. I walked back in my room. I was still freaking the hell out. I knew that I had to calm myself down and found my phone and pulled up some cartoon clips, which, to be honest, didn't make me feel any better. I got up and went back into my bathroom where I had left my sketchbook. It was in the bathtub, drying, as I had vomited all over it. I realised that was a bust, so I returned to my room and the bad vibes continued yet again. I finally decided just to get the vomit-covered sketchbook and use a dry page. 30 minutes had passed. Time made no sense while I was in bed. I drew for the next 10 minutes and I finally calmed down and called Joe. The trip had ended. All I had now was an afterglow of sorts. Even though I vomited immediately after ingesting, I still had the most powerful and horrible trip of my entire life. I went to hell. If there is hell, that was it. No hope, unbearable suffering, no end in sight, and no escape. Lonely, cold, sick. I talked to Joe for an hour. I felt religious at first. Even though I've been an atheist all my life, for a moment I actually believed in God. It was only after the effects fully wore off I stopped believing. I want to be a logical person, but there was a presence there with me. A divine presence, not evil, but unfeeling, chaotic. The only kind of God that would make a world full of this much suffering. I finally hung up with Joe after finishing my drawing of what I had just seen. I went to bed. The experience that I had was only an hour long. If I had not purged, it would have almost certainly been more intense and longer. I woke up the next day sober. I even probably went to bed sober. DMT is nowhere near as sleep schedule ruining as acid. I even had dreams. Pleasant lucid dreams of sexual encounters. I need to be more loving. If I got anything from this experience, it is to be more compassionate, to show more love. In conclusion, even though the experience was in many ways traumatic, I feel like I am a better person because of it. But I would have had a far better experience with someone to help calm me down. All I can really say is, be safe.